I don't have to do it like everybody else. I can still have the things that, light me up and lift me up. And if I can't do it like everybody else, well, then maybe I don't even want to be a part of that world. I just want to do it for the joy of doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
We got to the point of just like, I'm so used to being dead on the inside. This is weird. Like,
Yeah.
enjoying my life and tuning into thinking out of the box is like not, it doesn't feel comfortable, even though that was our natural state when we were children. And I want to
If you keep doing exactly what you're doing, you're going to keep getting exactly what you've been getting.
Yes.
It's never going to change. And it doesn't mean you've got to do something radical and, move to India and live in a hut somewhere.
Again, that's who's advised.
Which I wouldn't mind doing at all.
But that's really the question there. Catching yourself and asking, is this worth it? I love that. It's like, is this worth, first of all, just catching yourself, where is it that I'm off balance? And also, like, am I bypassing? I feel like that's a big one. Like, if I try to tiptoe and be like, let's not get off balance, like, let's pretend everything's okay. It's like, no. Are you willing to lose balance? And can you then, have the courage to find it again?
Just because something gets off balance, it doesn't mean everything's gone to hell in a handbasket. It means now you understand where center is. And you also understand, because you can also, you can overcorrect and then you go the other way.
Yeah, that's what I was picturing as you were saying. I'm like, some people, they're like, well, life just throws me all around. It's like, that's good because you're finding that balance. And it's like, it doesn't mean that, just because you tilt, you're going on center. It's like, no, sometimes you go like completely the other way. And that's also just like, okay, you have to find what is that center.
Right. And
Hello and welcome. I am here today with Susan McCranie, who just has this incredible journey that I've had the pleasure of witnessing. And I want to share it with you today, as well as some of the advice that she shared with me, which really shifted things for me. And this is why I have her here. Susan, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm excited. I want to begin by asking you, just telling me about your background, actually, and what is it that you do? Because that in itself, I just love that.
I do a little bit of everything. Right now, I've for the past 29 years, I've been a high school teacher. I teach dance and drama. Before that, I was a probation officer. And before that, I worked as a mental health counselor in a wilderness treatment facility for teenagers with drug and alcohol problems, behavior issues, things like that. We lived out in cabins in the woods with no electricity. It was pretty cool. It was kind of the concept of taking kids out of an unstructured world and giving them a structured kind of environment. So I've done, because my degree is in theater and psychology. So those, and theater and psychology go hand in hand anyway. So that's been kind of my path. And then in between all of that, I've danced professionally. I've performed as an actor and a singer and doing all sorts of different things. So
I love that. I love those shifts that, so many people are like dedicated to, let's like, invest in this one profession. That's what we want to do. And they kind of put themselves in that box. And this is something that I've addressed both in my videos and also when I was a guest at other podcasts, that it's just kind of like, we don't allow ourselves to get out of that box while you're here. Like, I've been many things. And I just love when people are there, like, it's like, let's keep discovering, because that's really what life's about.
Yeah, okay, I watched that. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I watch that with my students all the time. They get to their senior year and I'm going to go to this college and I'm going to major in this thing and I'm going to do this thing. And I always say, but what if you take a class and you find something that you like better or that sparks your interest? Don't say you can only just do this one thing. There may be other things for you to explore, or you may already be on the right path, but I always tell people not to pigeonhole themselves that way.
Yeah. I love that. And do you feel like a lot of people, like especially the young people, are still in that kind of like, oh, I have to decide who I'm going to be for the rest of my life, and like, this is what I'm getting married to?
Yeah, it's funny. Okay. It's just funny that it comes up, because I was having this conversation with one of my students the other day, and he was kind of trying to decide if he wants to stay involved in theater, if he wants to do something else, and where should I go to college and what should I do for my career? And I was like, whoa, pump the brakes for a second, buddy. You're 16. You've got years and years and years of discovering and all that. I was like, see what interests you, see what you enjoy, see what sparks something for you, and then follow that. There's no way that you can have your life mapped out that clearly, because I think about how different we are from the time we we're 17, 18 years old just to 25, like how much you change. And it's like you may find that you have no interest in what you're talking about now by the time you get there. So I think it's always important to kind of keep the door open. It's good to have a plan, but keep the door open to other
possibilities.
hallways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so funny that you mentioned that. As you were talking about that, I was just thinking about myself, like how it was different, let's say my 20s and like 30s. I was like, whoa, there's a complete shift. And as you're saying, I was like, whoa, you're 16. So here in Switzerland, we actually have like the kids are it's in grade 6 actually that they have that test that basically determines like the rest of their life whether they're going to go to university, like they're taking the university path or the apprenticeship path. So my kid is like 9, he's about to turn 9. He's there like, okay, I have to like decide what is it that I want to be and who do I want to grow up as. And like it sounds funny, but he has to. And like right now it's like, okay, well, you have to figure out which path you want to get on and whether you're planning to go to university or not, because it's like at that young age, that's where that decision really is made.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's actually one of those things. When I moved here, I was like, whoa, that's a big shift. Because like for me, like I haven't really understood kind of like that school is important up until like about 8th grade. That's where it really shifted for me.
It's very different at the school I teach at now. It's a pretty affluent area that where the school is in, and the kids, the pressure they get from their parents so early to figure everything out, and
Yeah.
the fear of I don't want to disappoint my parents, and they want me to go into something that's secure and safe and everything else. And then there's me saying, do what makes you happy, do what brings you joy, because you're going to spend more time in your work and your job than anywhere. And you
Yeah.
better love it, because I know what it's like to have a job that you hate. So it's interesting to see the kind of pressure that they're under, and then just trying to get them to just let's dial it down a little bit for a minute and
Yeah.
get a bigger picture. So yeah.
Speaking of pressure, because we're kind of diving into the topic of, what you're supposed to be and what you're like expected to be. I love that you've shared so much about your background in dancing and how that was all about, like you have to look a specific way, or, like there's a lot of pressure there. And actually the advice that you shared with me that we're going to share in a little bit was, in regards to dancing, kind of using that as a metaphor. But how would you say, that affected you, just that whole, because you're there so kind of yourself, and it's like, no, I speak my truth, and this is like even the way I dress or I express myself, like this is me. How did you overcome that from that environment that was like there was a lot of pressure of being a certain way, looking a certain way? Because I feel like that's one that a lot of people face, that like there's those expectations and these environments like demand it of you, and you feel like you don't really have a way out of it. But then how do you maintain that like authenticity?
For me, especially because when it comes to like singing and acting, that's something acting isn't my strongest suit, but singing is always something I did for other people because I know that it could be uplifting. But with dance, it was always so deep and just so deep down inside of me that it was, yes, I know people enjoyed seeing me perform, whatever. But the connection that I had, that's when I always say I feel most connected to God or to spirit or whatever you want to call it. But when you're constantly bombarded with you're not pretty enough, you're not thin enough, your leg's not up high enough, this isn't right, this is, that you get to that point where if I can't get this thing I love the most right, how am I ever going to get anything else right? And
Ooh.
so I spent so much of my time feeling just incredibly inadequate. And if I didn't conform in every possible way that I could, that I was never going to achieve anything or get where I wanted to be or anything like that. And I am fortunate that I have parents that they never said you have to live this way or do that. They sort of, especially my dad, gave us a lot of freedom to sort of explore and things like that. But with dance, that carried over, and eventually I think I had a pretty bad injury when I was working in the treatment center that I worked in, and I was basically told I wasn't going to be able to dance anymore. And that makes you, because even though I was working as a counselor, I still wanted to continue performing and teaching dance and all of that. And when you're faced with losing something that you love so much, you start to decide what's more important, doing it the way everybody else says I'm supposed to, or doing it the way I know I can. And if, and I don't know that there was any one grand epiphany sort of moment. Um, but I know that there was just, excuse me, there was just a shift in realizing that I don't have to, I don't have to do it like everybody else. I can still have the things that, light me up and lift me up. And if I can't do it like everybody else, well, then maybe I don't even want to be a part of that world. I just want to do it for the joy of doing it. Um, and it's funny because I've never really felt I fit in anywhere. Um, and even in my own family, um, because I am, I'm always bedazzled with jewelry and I have tattoos and I have this, people talk about thinking outside of the box. I've never seen the box, so I don't even know what it means to think outside of it. And I think that's just, the way I was made. Um, but the more I started realizing the unbelievable pressure that I put on myself to be what everyone else said I was supposed to be and look like they said I was supposed to look and act the way they said I was supposed to look, I really got to that point where it's kind of, I mean, I get this image in my head of like standing on a mountaintop, just screaming at the top of my lungs, going, I can't do this anymore. And I think that came at a time um, when I was a probation officer, which is what I did after being a counselor and being surrounded by the level of negativity and horror and darkness and sadness and just it was terrible that I knew I I couldn't keep trying to fit into that job because it would, been successful and a solid income and blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
Um and teaching just kind of, I mean, no joke, it sort of fell into my lap. I always thought I'd be a good teacher, but I wasn't really sure.
Mm-hmm.
But once I got into that teaching environment and I started being the grown up on the outside looking in at what the kids were going through, it was immediate understanding of good heavens, no wonder they're so, stressed and overwhelmed and
Mm.
beating themselves up all the time
Yeah.
because,
And what I'm hearing you
I
say, it's kind of you got to see your experience as well
right.
through that. And I love that. You said something just so that I think I'm going to quote it below the video, just that, it's like, if I can't even do that thing, like my passion right, then what the hell am I good at? What
Exactly.
is it? What the hell can I do? That was really strong there. And that feeling of inadequacy, it's like, but I love it so much. And like, this is what I'm drawn to.
Mhm.
And even getting like a shutdown, it's like, yeah, but that's not good enough. And because we're like looking at that outside validation of like, am I doing
Right.
it right? But it's really, it's like, if it's coming from you, like it's just that energy moving through you, like it can be wrong because
Right. And
you're
yeah, and
very
you get
so natural.
told, I mean, you get it programmed out of you.
Yeah.
You're supposed to, everything's got to be practical and,
Yeah.
401k and your retirement plan and buying a house and have, whatever. And to me, I would much rather be incredibly happy and joyous and dead broke than
Mm,
rolling in money doing something I can't stand to do and I can't, that I can't find any joy because when I can't find any joy, I have no joy to offer to
yes.
anybody else. I serve them no good. I'm just this big old black cloud showing up going, I hate my life.
Yeah.
And, that's not really fair. But there's so many things and I realize now, even if I had gone further with dance, my career would have been way over by the time I was,
Mm,
early 30s. It's a very
right.
short,
Yeah.
tiny window. But I found a way to hold on to that, the wonder and the connection that I feel from dance,
Yeah.
but still do the other grown up, have official job and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's even though dance comes the most naturally to me of anything else, but there's so many, which obviously I didn't realize that at the time when I was deep in studying dance and all of that, but there's just so many things I learned about life and how so many things
Mm.
about training as a dancer parallel, day to
Yeah.
day living.
Yeah. And
Um,
that's actually bringing me to the advice that I want you to share here that you shared with me. And actually, as you're talking, I'm like, oh my God. And because dance was like a big part for me when I start tuning into more of my feminine, I start to move and like that was really different. And there's just like so much healing through that. And I know there's also, a lot of, there's like dance therapists that I recently spoke with that are like, some people just can't express it, but there's like, they can dance it or they can move their body. That is just so healing of its own. So I'm just like, oh my God, I want to have like a whole, video with you talking
mhm.
about that. But honing in on that, advice and the advice that you shared using the dance metaphor, can you just share here? What
Yeah.
is it that you
Yeah.
shared?
When you're learning certain techniques in dance, well, it requires a great deal of balance and everything like that. Obviously, that's the technical part of it. Um, but the thing is you cannot understand what it is to have balance until you lose your balance. You can't understand where is my center, where is the center of my gravity that will keep me being able to do because if you go into a turn and you're off balance, you're going to fall out of the turn. But if you find your balance, you know exactly what it feels like. And you're not just doing, a single turn, you're doing quadruple turns because your balance is so on point, not to use a ballet term, but that's the same way in life. We get this idea that if it's not always everything's perfect and everything's just right and whatever, but half the time we don't know what that balance is because we've never been off balance because we fought so hard to do everything right and follow the rules and be responsible and on and on and on. And it's truly your body, you feel, and it's almost like for a young dancer, it's like this switch gets flipped and your body goes, oh, that's what it feels like to be
Mm,
centered.
yes.
That's what it feels like to be really solid and grounded.
Yeah.
And then from then on, you can feel it when you're starting to go off for whatever reason. In dance, it can be something as simple as, dropping your shoulder too far or leaning forward or backwards too far. And
Mm.
it's the exact same way in life. Just because something gets off balance, it doesn't mean everything's gone to hell in a handbasket. It means now you understand where center is. And you also understand because you can overcorrect and then you go the other
Yeah,
way. So
that's what I was picturing as you were saying. I'm like, some
yeah,
people they're like, well, life just throws me all around. It's like that's good because you're finding that balance. And it's like it doesn't mean that, just because you tilt, you're going on center. It's like, no, sometimes you go like completely the other way. And that's also just like, okay, you have to find what is that center.
right. And it's just a matter of self-correcting.
Yeah.
It's not it's not one of those things someone else. I can technically explain to you what position your body needs to be in
Mm,
for you to feel that,
yes.
but you have to feel it yourself.
Yeah.
You have to know and for you, your center of balance and your center of gravity is different than mine. We're different height, we're different sizes, we're different everything. Our body structure is different. So it's going to be different. So what's balance for me may not be balance for you. But
Oh
the thing
man, that's just
is,
such a good one.
yeah,
I'm like loving so many levels of that.
yeah. And that's also learning that because your balance doesn't look like my balance,
Mm,
that doesn't mean yours is off or
yeah.
wrong or you're going in the wrong direction. It merely means we are two totally different entities with different goals and thoughts and passions and everything else. And it's just that it's okay if your way isn't my way. It's okay because the ultimate goal is that we're all there's never going to be a time when everything's 100% always dead center balanced perfect. Life just isn't like that, but it's us knowing how can we self correct, how can we get back to, because sometimes it's things we do, it's our own choices or our own actions. Sometimes it's things that happen in life. You
And
know
so
you lose.
reaction,
Right.
response or reaction to it.
Right. And it's the same way in dance. When
Yeah.
suddenly begin to doubt yourself, or you're tired, or you're overwhelmed, or you're dehydrated, or you're whatever, it's not because you chose for things to go off balance. It's not, you didn't pick it. It happens, and you have the choice to either go, oh, I'm never going to get this right and I can't, and give up, or say, okay, all right, let's just take a minute, take a breath, step back, walk off to the side, shake it off a little bit, and then come back to it. Because it's, life is never going to be, and you know what? I don't think I'd want life to be that way, because I feel like it would get a little boring.
Yeah.
It must be, it's
And I
like,
want to say the willingness, because as you were talking, what it kind of took me back to the beginning, that we were talking about how, at the end of life, when you were saying, it's like a lot of people have this realization at the end of life of just like, oh, it's not about the money, right? Because when we're talking about like students and going into, I want security and whatever, and so many it's like the regrets of the dying, like I think it was 5 Regrets of the Dying, the book, and how she said that the one that she heard the most often, this nurse who was there being with people when they were almost ready to pass, was that I lived a life that other people expected of me, not my own. And so many people like realize that towards the end, like it's like, oh, I shouldn't have gone after the money, I should have gone after my passion, right?
right. Yeah.
But it's having that courage to, which is basically, you're there kind of like, let's try to not lose our balance for as long as we can. And then when you're old, you're just like, damn, I should have tried doing it the other way. It's like, and it's that willingness of the, like, it's okay to lose balance, because that's that's really how you find yourself. And I feel like that's really an important point, because a lot of people just try to tiptoe and like, let's not lose balance. We don't want that. That doesn't feel good. It's like, but then you never find your center.
And it's, by the way, everybody should read that book, The 5 Regrets of the Dying. That's such a fantastic book, because it's so simple, but it's so consistent of what people, say when they're at the, the end of their physical life here. That's an amazing book. Yeah, I think my dad came from way down South Georgia. Dad was a, sharecropper, farmer, all that kind of stuff, dirt poor. He's the only one of the 5 boys that ever left South Georgia and went off and, went in the military, and then eventually became an attorney and was extremely successful, not only financially, but just his reputation. But that was never, he wanted to be successful, and he loved being able to provide a certain, lifestyle for our family and take us on really cool trips and all that sort of stuff. And it was really more about experiences. It was never about him buying us the fancy clothes and all that. And I, still don't care about stuff like that. But he's still, even with all of that, to him, it was just money. It was, yes, it gave you these opportunities and gave you the, my dad traveled the world and got to go to all these really great places. But at the end, really, what do you have when you get to the end? It's like all the money in the world and all the financial success and all the, career success. At the end, it doesn't change anything. It's not gonna stop time. It's not gonna, heal you so you can live forever. It's not gonna do you any good. And, my dad went through money kind of like crazy, but not in a frivolous way. It was, being able to do things for other people and being able to help somebody out when, they were down on their luck, or investing in a friend's invention that he was trying to get, patented.
Your
and
dad
things
sounds
like
like
that.
my dad. It kind of like, it's like literally the same story. Like he was like, dirt poor from the beginning, and then he kind of like, was self-made and had a really comfortable life. And it was the same thing. It was like really easy, and that would like frustrate my mom, because she was there, like she was there having a good salary, and she came from a wealthy family, but she just didn't have that, because she was always in lack mentality. So even though she had that, like that foundation, it just went downhill from there. While him, it was like the other way around, and just like seeing the difference of how people treat money. And my dad was kind of like, what sounds a lot like your dad's like, but it's for the experiences, or like, oh, it's where money goes. Like, it's just like, it's like the person that you become with that, you know what I mean? It's like, what experiences do you have? How do you invest? Like, do you invest in yourself, or do you invest in that fake status, or, you know, like that kind of like keeping up with the Joneses or whatever, you know? And yeah, it's like that, what is left at the end of it? What kind of person do you become? And
Right.
that's the big one.
Right. Because it's not really going to matter. I mean, sure, if you can leave your kids a big inheritance or whatever, but so what? You know, what lessons did you leave
On a
behind? What
personal level, yeah. And
yeah,
that
it's
again
like
goes back to that thing, because, you know, some people are just like, well, that's good. I mean, you contributed to your kid's future. It's like,
sure.
yeah, but again, it's kind of like, are you giving from the overflow, or are you giving like even that? It's like, oh, I have to make money to give like a good future to my kids while I'm coming last, you know, while I'm not really living my
Mhm.
life, while I'm like, that's not giving for the overflow. That's not like, while you're there alive and present, like, are you actually present with your kids? And like, I'm pretty sure if a person has like that kind of like, oh no, it's just about the money, I have to be there, like that person can't be fully present with their family to
Yeah.
begin with.
Yeah, and I think about, you know, my dad, I mean, he read all the time and he
Mm,
would, you know, to him, you know, if you want to call it church, was working in the garden and being outside and getting
mm,
his hands dirty and um you know, doing ballet in the middle of the living room, even though he could not dance at all. But it was, he always had that joy. And yes, he had a lot of success in his career and all that sort of stuff. But he had that balance. And you could always tell when things were not balanced for him, because when he was like overwhelmed because of some huge trial he was working on or whatever, because he would get very quiet and kind of disengaged
mm,
and not that, you know, that big ball of joy.
yeah.
And but he was so good at catching himself and going,
Mm.
okay, this isn't worth it, this is not how I
Mm.
want
That's
to
really, I feel
live.
like that right there is such an important question, because I do want to get to the practical aspect of this and also being mindful of the time. That that's really the question there, catching yourself and asking, is this worth it? I love that. It's like,
Yeah.
is this worth, first of all, just catching yourself, where is it that I'm off balance? And also, like, am I bypassing? I feel like that's a big one. Like, if I try to tiptoe and be like, let's not get off balance, like, let's
Mm,
pretend everything's okay. It's like, no, are you willing to lose balance? And can you then, you know, have the courage to find it again? But also just asking, is this worth it? Not necessarily like, is this worth, you know, going off balance for it? Because that's kind of like the tiptoeing sometimes with the bypassing, but rather going into like, what kind of person am I becoming in the process, and what is it
right.
that's going to contribute to my growth?
Hmm.
And to wrap up, I want to ask you, like, what are some of those, because you're a coach, and, you know, what are those things that you would say to a person that's there afraid of losing their balance? And I know that you have that with your students as well. They're just like,
Hmm.
but I'm supposed to go this way. And they're afraid of just going into that, like, I don't feel safe. It's not safe for me to lose my balance. How would you advise a person like that? And understand, really going into, I want to touch on the why, like, why is this important, which we kind of had. And, you know, you explained about the example of your dad, like, it's just like a shift, a complete shift when a person dives into
Hmm.
that. But going into, you know, a bit deeper into that, the why and how to do it.
Yeah, I think people expect there's some magical, huge philosophical answer to that. And it's really simple. This is what I have to teach my students. I have to teach them how to play, because
Yeah.
we get, the older we get, we're told you have to act this way, you have to keep your hands folded
Mm.
nicely, you have to stay quiet, you're not supposed to, you know, be silly, and you're not supposed to not.
That's what
Um,
grown-ups do.
Right, exactly. And most of the time, if somebody calls me an adult or a grown up, I'm like, don't call me that. No, because that's
Mm.
that connotation of that is something I don't want to be. Um, but it's just remembering, what did you do when you were a kid?
I'm thinking
You
of Peter
didn't,
Pan right now. It's like those
right.
little kids that never want to grow up.
Yeah. And the thing is that you can do both. You can be a
Yeah.
responsible, mature, successful
Mm.
adult, and you can still play. It
Yes.
doesn't make you immature, it doesn't make you childish, it just makes you childlike.
It keeps that
It's
connection and that magic
right.
alive. Yes.
Right, because that's what I watch get taken out of
Yeah.
kids as they get older. You're supposed to have a plan and a schedule and a, you know, not that those things aren't important, but you cannot think about when you were a little kid, when you were getting ready to play a game, whatever it was, if it was just an outside game, somebody didn't type out an agenda, from 1 to 1:15, we're going to play dodgeball. From 1:15 to 1:30, you just played. And whatever came to you. And you could pick up a stick and it was a magic wand, or it was a sword, or it was whatever. I'm not saying you have to go run around in the backyard like a little kid.
Although it's advised, just saying.
Exactly. But it's just simple things. Taking 5 minutes to stand in your driveway and look at the clouds and go, oh my gosh, that looks like a dragon. That looks like a dog. That looks like just giving yourself that moment to just
permission to begin with.
Right. To just relax, because it's something as little and tiny like that will help you realize where you're off balance. And that, man, I work and work and work and work and work all the time. And think about it. Ask yourself, when's the last time you really laughed? Like deep belly laughed. The average child laughs 80 to 100 times a day. The average human, it's under 3 times a day. Because why? Well, you're not supposed to. That's why people think, they're like, what is up with that chick? Because I laugh at stuff all the time. Because to me, it's like it releases endorphins. Doing simple things like doodling on a piece of paper, coloring, playing with Legos. And people say, oh, I'm not creative, I'm not artistic. Yes, you are. Every time you pick out, new wallpaper or a new bed, that's still you using a different part of your brain. It doesn't mean you're not showing up for work on time. It doesn't mean you're not paying your bills on time. It doesn't mean you're not being successful in your work. But it is okay to sit down and go, geez Louise, my life cannot be only this one thing. It can't be, because I'm then at that point, I'm merely existing. I'm existing. I'm going through the motions.
And that's the scary part. It's like, what you said, actually, I read one of the teacher was saying how he was talking about a relationship, that how some people are so used to having that negative relationship. He was talking about like women experiencing those men that don't show up. They're like, it's kind of like you have a car that one wheel is off, and you kind of just like know that it, like, you're supposed to steer a bit more to the left, because it's like it's not, it doesn't function well, to the point that it's normal. So if you sit in a car that actually works, you're like, well, this is weird.
Yeah, it's like, what's wrong with this thing?
Exactly.
Like, no,
and this is the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
We got to the point of just like, I'm so used to being dead on the inside. This is weird. Like, enjoying my life and tuning into thinking out of the box is like not, it doesn't feel comfortable, even though that was our natural state when we were children. And I want to say, like, on the practical aspect, because like, well, why? Because it's kind of like one of those like, well, that would be great to do in theory when I have time. It's like, the impact that it has, right? It's just going from neuroplasticity, just that, how your brain develops, but also just in your daily life, right? In your work. It's like, you're just thinking in the box, and you don't train your mind to think differently. You don't train your mind to create new opportunities, to see new opportunities, even though they're there. And this is why this is so crucial.
Well, and I think it's that, I want to say to people all the time, if you keep doing exactly what you're doing, you're going to keep getting exactly what you've been getting.
Yes.
It's never going to change. And it doesn't mean you've got to do something radical and, move to India and live in a hut somewhere.
Again, that's advised.
which I wouldn't mind doing at all. But it's something as simple as, today, when I get off work at 5:00, I'm leaving work at 5:00, and I'm going to stop and get ice cream on the way home.
And I do want to emphasize just how hard it was for you at some point. I know this was hard for me as well, to just like give myself time, even like it's 15 minutes. Like, no, I don't have the time. It's like, okay, if you don't have 15 minutes, you don't have a life. Okay. Like, you just don't have a life. And when you say this, like, oh, it doesn't have to be like radical or whatever. A lot of people, it's like they get to that point of just like, well, I'm surviving. Like, I don't need it. And I want to emphasize here, it's like, are you going for surviving or thriving? Because I know for me, it was like, well, I'm surviving, I'm functioning, I'm fine. Like, I don't need this, or I don't need to connect to my inner child or look at the clouds. Like, I've got better things to do. It's like, okay, but what kind of like quality of life do you have? And for me, I understood my turning point was like, oh my God, I'm going to be that person that's there on my deathbed being like, I wished I live a life for me and not for somebody else. Because
Mhm.
it's really that. So it's like, what kind of quality, what is that end result you're going for? So Susan, where can people find you? Because this is amazing work that you do, connecting to that, I want to say, just inner magic, inner light within you that so many of us have shut down, and really shifting that life. Because like I said, this really shifts everything in your life. Your daily life completely shifts when you reconnect to that deep part of yourself. So
Mhm.
where can people find you?
Well, you can always email me. That's a super easy way to get me.
And
It's my
I'll
email
put it
is,
under. Yeah.
yeah, it's just dancingriver16@gmail.com. Dancing River is actually a name that was given to me by a shaman that I studied with, which is kind of a cool story, but we'll tell that another time.
I
And then
love
you can
that.
always check out my my website. It's just Susan McCranie Life Coach .com. And it has, you can also connect with me through there, and it's got a little bit of my story and just kind of, you
Mm.
know, because people think it's, yes, I've always sort of maintained a little bit of that childlike wonder, but I also know what it's like to work myself to death because I had to prove something as an adult, and that is the bit. If I can help just one person, just know that you can, falling off center is okay. Losing your balance is okay. And there's 1,000 ways you can get back to that. And it doesn't require, you know, brain surgery or $1 million or anything like that. It's so much simpler than people, and I can say that because I lived it. I'm not saying it because I've always been this way. I mean,
Because it
that
took
just from
work,
having,
and it starts with one yes step. And I feel like
yep,
just for you as well in your journey, it's like it's that one choice. It's when you actually make a decision of, this is what I want, or rather, like,
right.
this is not, I don't want to have that kind of deathbed experience. Like, this
Mm-hmm.
is not what I want, and this is what I want.
Yeah. So I just want everybody today, go outside, take your shoes and socks off, stand in the grass and look at the clouds for 5 minutes. And if if you do it for longer, your neighbors might be like, what's up? But 5 minutes, maybe you're just looking and just feeling the breeze on your face. Just try it. You just try it. You would be absolutely amazed. But it's so much simpler than we want to make it.
I
So
second that. Make that, like, going outside and taking some President second that. So Susan, thank you so much.
you
And
betcha.
thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Okay. Take care, everyone.